All right, hey everyone. This is Maggieostara. I'm delighted to be here today. Welcome to Sovereign Sisters Salons. And I am delighted today to have one of my favorite people in the world with me, Christinearylo. She and I have been friends for over 10 years. I don't know. Yeah, somewhere over 10 years, I think. We first met in a Queen's circle. So we were exploring our sovereignty in certain ways, even back then. And we've been in a couple of Queen's circles since then. And we have been on parallel tracks doing different work, but always really committed at the foundation, I think, to women's sovereignty and however that shows up in our daily lives. And she is the author of 3 best-selling books already. And today we're celebrating the launch of what will also be a best-selling book, which is Overwhelmed and Over It: Embrace Your Power to Stay Centered and Sustained in a Chaotic World. Now, could we ever use that more than ever? Like today, right now? I mean, Christine, I know, I don't know that you probably, your mind did not plan this, but the cosmic order planned that your book would be coming out now when our world is probably more chaotic and insane than ever. So I want to just start out by sharing your official bio so people who don't already know you have a little bit of a sense of who you are. And then I want to just say a couple other words from me, from my personal experience. So Christinearylo, MBA, is a transformational leadership advisor, teacher, speaker, 3-time best-selling author, and host of the internationally acclaimed podcast, Feminine Power Time. As the founder of the Feminine Wisdom Way, an online wisdom school for women and expanding possibility, a feminine leadership consultancy, she offers teachings, mentoring, retreats, and trainings that have touched thousands of people on 6 continents. And it's really been a pleasure for me to watch your evolution over these years, Christine. And I remember when I first met you, I approached you. We were at this Queen Circle, and I approached you and I said, would you participate in, it wasn't the first online conference I did, I think it was the second one, but it was called the Belief Relief Intensive. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I totally remember that.
You were like, oh my God, Belief Relief. Oh, that's awesome. So yeah, so we did the Belief Relief Intensive back whenever that was, 10 years ago or so. And yeah, and I think that, your work has been so deeply profound in your ability to dissect in a very systematic, accessible, and like I said, deeply profound way in all of these different kind of topics that you've chosen to dive deeply into. I know Madly in Love with Me, your book on self-love, is a book I continue to recommend to people all the time. And I'm sure that this one will be one that I will be recommending all the time. So I just want to welcome you, Christine. Thank you for coming and being with us today.
Yeah, thank you. And I brought my book baby with me. So just one day old.
1 day old. And I love the cover. I have to say, the energy of the cover is amazing. Hold it up again for a second so people can see that. Look at that. It's just like bursting with energy and light, just like you.
Yes. Well, it's all about liberating ourselves. Talk about sovereignty, liberating ourselves from the unsustainable realities that we've found ourselves in. And that's why I wanted the cover to feel inviting, but also really empowering. Which is, it couldn't be a better time for us to be having this conversation. Actually, I said to Maggie today, texted her, and every morning as part of my morning practice, I pull a card from a sacred feminine energy deck that I work with, and it has all these different, I call them superpowers of the feminine. And of course, today the card I pulled was sovereignty. Like literally, I pulled the card of sovereignty today. I'm like, okay, awesome, great, let's do it.
Well, so let's just dive in there a little bit, because you and I have had a lot of conversations about sovereignty over the years. And one of the things I've loved is the way that you say, well, we're all exploring sovereignty, right? Those of us who are kind of in, on this train, if you were, and we're doing it in different ways. We're looking at different parts of our lives, but then also what we see even in the same parts of our lives is different, right? And it's illuminated. And I like to talk about facets of sovereignty like a beautiful diamond, you know, or a crystal that has many, many different sides. And when we do that, it becomes very luminous and very rich and profound. And so if you could just give us a little bit of a sense of, you know, even just a piece of how you think about sovereignty and why it's so significant right now. Why do we need to be talking about this and exploring it?
It's interesting because words have so much power in them, and they can seem so like sovereignty, self-love, enlightenment, you know, like these words that like, we got things going on in our world and this is what you want to talk about. This has been my experience for many years. And actually, yes, it is exactly what we need to be talking about. And I think sovereignty gives us a portal into a deeper, more meaningful conversation where we can actually find the power that we have within us to be the change we wish to see, not from a refrigerator magnet kind of, you know, lottie, but like really, if you were to put at the center, like what's at the center of all of my work in the world, it's at the heart. The heart is at the center. And I really believe that as women and as humans, our hearts are our power centers. And sovereignty is core to that, because if you look at the word sovereignty and you break it down, I love etymology. Maggie knows that she loves etymology in words too. The word sovereign has the word reign in it, Reign. I remember you all, actually the first day I heard the word sovereignty, I was in my first like deep, sacred feminine, you know, I didn't know what the feminine really was, deep esoteric training. And I remember when I came across the word sovereignty, I was like, what is that? Like, it was like it just went zing right through my body, just like the first time I heard the word self-love. I'm like, what is that? And it went zing. Or the feminine, what is that? Boom. And so sovereignty, if you look it up in the dictionary, it's so weird, the dictionary, but it tells us a lot about our culture, and that it basically is like, it's all about being a head of state, right? It's all like being the queen of England or whatever. But really sovereignty is, and for me, and the way I hold it is really it's our wholeness. It's our wholeness within ourselves. And so you can look at that. It's the masculine and feminine within us that are integrated, so that we don't need anything out there to make us whole, because we are whole. From a self-love perspective, it's connected to the branch of self-love that's self-empowerment. It's being the queen or the king of your domain. It's the monarch of your dreams. In terms of life design and work design and what we talk about in Overwhelmed and Over It, it's like no one here is coming to save you. There is no leader outside of you. You are a leader, not because of a position, not because of a title, not because of an accolade. You're a leader because you've chosen, first of all, to be the leader of your life. And you can't even get out of overwhelm or create a real meaningful, deep-rooted life if you haven't embraced that part first. And I think that's one of our shared things. And I'm imagining many of you that are here, we got to stop looking for the leaders outside of us or making it about, you know, Maggie's not a leader because she has a PhD. I'm not a leader because I have an MBA. And those are experiences that we've had, and we worked to get those things. But we're a leader because we choose to show up every day in our lives and have sovereignty over our own lives, and not look outside to another system to say, this is what success looks like. This is how things have to be done. And then we're willing to not know, you know, and like we're willing to like be pioneers and step forward and be like, this doesn't feel right. Let's do it differently. Like that's sovereignty. That's embracing and embodying your power.
Beautiful, beautiful. And since you brought up the dictionary, I don't know if I've ever shared this with you before, but in my dictionary, there was a third meaning. So the first one was royalty, right? The second one is the sovereign state, which is the United States started that as the first sovereign state. And then the third one was potent like a remedy. And what they meant was, like in homeopathy, you have higher and higher potencies, right? And in different types of medicine, you have higher and higher, you know, and so the ones that's, I guess, the most potent, right, is the sovereign one. But I took just the phrase and I was like, oh, sovereignty is potent like a remedy. It is a remedy. Not that it is the sovereign of the remedies. And so that's something that I've kind of worked with in relation to, if we think about the evolution of sovereignty from royalty to the sovereign state, right? So what you might think of as kind of like a masculine individual sovereignty, which is individualism, which is really created for white men, frankly, to what I'm now calling feminine sovereignty, which is the remedy to a lot of the ills that we have, which is that we're developing, yes, this sense for each individual woman to have, like you said, to be the queen of her domain, or to be the monarch of her domain, or to be have command of her domain, right? So there's that piece. But then there's this other piece about how we as sovereign beings also, and as sovereign women, sovereign all genders, relate to each other. And that this form of sovereignty, that's what I'm calling feminine sovereignty, has at its root, it has things like compassion and caring and concern for the earth and for the highest good and all of that. And that is in itself a remedy for the challenges that we're experiencing today. And so that's why you said, we're truly talking about this esoteric thing called sovereignty, but in fact, it is the remedy. It's the fundamental thing that we need to be developing. And I think that that's definitely what you've created in this book of yours, is one of the paths to creating that.
Yes, I love that, and I'm wondering, so I could take that one of two ways. You tell me which way you want to take it. We'll come back around to wherever we go anyway. But I don't know if I can share a screen, but I have a glyph that I can show that actually talks about, because you kind of took it to the place of feminine and masculine power. It's not in the book. It's actually not the next book, but the book after that, but it's what I teach in the power spectrums that could be helpful just to kind of give us some understanding to that. And, or we could take it to the way of how the system, how our lack of sovereignty is creating the overwhelm we feel. We could go either way. Which direction would you like?
Let's look at your glyph, because I love your visuals, and I just made you a co-host, so I think you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen here. So what I'm gonna show you the model first. Hold on one second. Okay, so I love this, Maggie. I'm so happy that you brought this up, because I think we have a fundamental misunderstanding about power in our culture. Like, of course we do. And I'm going to show you two glyphs here. And this is connected to the feminine leadership work that I do, but it doesn't currently have a book, just what I teach. So if you look at this, can you see where it says spectrum of power, Maggie?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So the thing that looks like an infinity 8 sign is called a harmonizer. All my work right now is also about harmonizing. How do we harmonize things together so that we can come together and create wholeness, which sovereignty really is? I mean, I found the word sovereignty because I found it through relationship, realizing I was choosing to be in relationship romantic because there were parts of me that weren't feeling whole. And part where we're at right now as a culture and a society is we're trying to really come into to harmony, not balance, but harmony between the feminine and the masculine, so that we can actually get to the place that people talk about oneness and unity consciousness and all this. You can't even go there without this conversation. So this model, what it shows us on this harmonizer is that on the left, you have feminine power, on the right, you have masculine power. And then if you go off the spectrum, that's where we have power distortions.
Yeah, either direction, right? That's great.
Direction, right? So sovereignty, like we have to be careful, I think, about our language, about what sometimes we label as masculine power is actually distorted masculine power versus what I would call divine masculine power or aligned masculine power. And the same thing with feminine power. It can be just as distorted as masculine. So we have to be careful about how we don't want to make the masculine bad. It's not bad. It's just that we, for the last 5,000 to 8,500 to 11,500 years, depending how you count, we've had a lot of that distortion, right? Yeah. So that's kind of the model. And if we can get harmonized within ourselves, our feminine power and our masculine power, and also value that. I mean, that's part of what Overwhelmed and Over It is about, is what's happened is we got to own as women, we don't value or trust the feminine power over here, because we've been so indoctrinated over here in masculine power. So the intellect, moving swiftly, competition, like things that are ingrained in us because of this overculture. I myself, and pretty much almost every woman I've ever worked with has had to move herself over here for a while to really deepen into what this is, and then write the distortions, and then actually embrace and value the feminine, the stillness, the compassion, and all of those things. And so if you look at this one other glyph, I'll show you this glyph, which brings the sovereignty forward. Okay, here goes this one. So here's if you put unity and sovereignty on the same glyph. You have sovereignty, which I have on the masculine side, and unity, which you have on the feminine side. And if you can actually be in those two from a aligned place, you actually create interconnection. So distorted sovereignty is what this country has really become in the United States. It's what the world has become. It's like power over versus, empowering people. It is the individual over the collective. And then over here you have unity. There's a lot of distorted feminine. So distorted feminine unity would be like codependence, right? Tons of codependence going on, and or disempowerment or self-sacrifice. I mean, like that's part of the promise of Overwhelmed and Over It is like, we need to stop the self-sacrifice. And that's where this distortion comes in. Like, I will just sacrifice myself or my family or the whole or the organization. And so I think our Maggie, I didn't plan that we were going to share this, but this is important because we don't want to go too far off either one of these. But some of us have been so over here distorted, and I find that, and I don't know if it's true for you or not, Maggie, and everyone. What I find for myself, and I also find in my relationships, is that we tend to go towards one or other sides of the spectrum. So like for me, I will go more towards the sovereignty than I will towards the unity. And my partner, Noah, will go more towards the unity than the sovereignty in some places in my life. And so it's just interesting to know where we fall on it and get that we're actually writing this, as you just said, Maggie, you're writing this into its divine place. And also to know that we're writing this one too, to hopefully come into a place of centeredness so we can elevate the way that we see and work in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you for sharing those. I love that you're so great at creating models and things like that. And it helps us to be able to conceptualize things and understand them better. And I do want to just say one other thing, and then I want to dive into a little bit about what brought you to your book and then talk about your book, which is that one of the things that I've been writing about a lot is that sovereignty is actually always relational. Like we think of sovereignty, not necessarily you, but we often think of sovereignty as being an individual thing, right? But sovereignty is always relational, because if there was nothing to relate to, you wouldn't be sovereign of anything. You know what I mean? Like, so it's an interesting piece, because I see sovereignty as inherently relational, whether that's related to oneself and one's parts and one's, that like the inner landscape, that we're in the terrain of the inner landscape, that we're the sovereign of that aspect of who we are. But it's also that it's always an aspect of how we relate to other people, is how we experience our sovereignty, and that it's inherently about that. It's like if you were off, living in a cave by yourself, and you could say you were sovereign of your inner landscape, maybe, but it's not a very rich way of thinking, right? It's more about how do we relate to our world and to each other and to our planet, because to me, sovereignty has stewardship in it too. I mean, we really need to elevate our understanding of what our role is. Anyway, that's a whole that we could go down.
Well, that's the fifth. I mean, but it's a good segue into where, depending on which way you want to take our conversation about this book. So Overwhelmed and Over It, I've been teaching this and researching it for 10 years of like, what is at the root of the reason why, so we're going to speak specifically to women here for a moment, but it's cultural. We've been in the workforce. Women have been in the workforce more full-time for 60 plus years, talking about work-life balance and stress management and time management. And it's worse. It's not better. Like all the statistics show, I mean, 1 in 3 women will die of heart disease. That number just 7 years ago was 1 in 4. So the pressure that's on us is too much. And through many conversations I've had with women who were part of the women's rise and liberation in the 60s and 70s, including Gloria Steinem among them, it was really after this, like, this doesn't make any sense. As smart as we are, like, why haven't we been able to figure this out? And that really led me to get to 7 root reasons underneath why, no matter what we try. I mean, the thing is, you and I all know what to do to not be overwhelmed, to stay healthy, but we struggle because the systemic overculture is set up for burnout. And so what I want everyone to understand is that it's not your fault that you have not been able to find a way to balance it all, because your life isn't meant to be in balance. Work-life balance is BS. It's the wrong equation for balancing, managing, organizing your life. Stop. We are also living in an overculture. And what I'm trying to do with Overwhelmed and Over It in the conversations is to a sovereign being will wake herself up or themselves up and like look around at the systems, not just assimilate into them. And so for many years, we've had to assimilate into the systems, government, healthcare, corporations, financial markets, like we're holding on. And so 2020, I call this the great catalyst of 2020, the things that have happened, and not that any of us want these things to happen, but let's be honest, Maggie, I know your stories and I know my stories. I mean, like, I had to get a Big Mac truck to run over me, not like literally, but like to wake me up and be like, you are on the track to success from the patriarchal perspective at the age of 30. And I had a big wake up call and I was avoiding it. And And I got it. And thank God I chose a different path. But like, that's what we're in right now. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to normalize for everybody. We've been in overwhelm for a long time. The level of intensity has been ratcheting up for years. I go back and look at my podcast from 2016, 17. I've been talking about intensity. We've been talking about this for a long time, but it's like the heat just got turned up. And like, if we were caterpillars trying to become butterflies, we are in the heat of the lava goo culturally. And so what that can give us, and this is where Maggie and I meet, and I'm imagining why many of you are here, is it gives us agency. It gives us agency that what's happening isn't happening to us, it's happening through us. Mm-hmm. And in many ways, it's happening to help us release the things that are our primal fears, are things that don't keep us in our sovereignty, are things that are false power, so that we can be the most empowered, elevated leaders possible. And is that easy? No, sometimes it's like a freaking Brillo pad. Like, it's hard. It's challenging, right? It's like yoga. Maggie and I both do yoga. And some days we're like, well, I don't even, can I hold this pose, And so I just want to say that to everybody. And so this is the time when you want to like dive deeper into your practice, dive deeper into your understanding, dive deeper into being an agency to understand your own heart, to understand your own mind, to understand your own body, and embrace that this is a time when we can heal the things within ourselves that have caused us to say okay to a crazeball society and way of working and living, and stay sustained as we go through the transformation and create the new. And that's where we're at, in my opinion, right now.
Well, tell us a little bit more. Your book is based on this idea of these daring acts of liberation, right? And so you've organized the structure of the book around these different daring acts of liberation. And in particular, or one aspect I'm interested in is, I know that you don't want to just give people more things to do.
I don't need more things.
Like, that's not, it's like, oh no, don't give me another thing to do. And I think sometimes when I look out about what people are putting out in the world, it's like, oh my God, they want me to do this whole other thing. And it's like, I'm already overwhelmed. I'm already overbooked. I already don't, so you've got a shift in terms of what you're offering us in the book. So tell us more about that.
Yeah. Well, one of the root reasons why we're so overwhelmed is because we have too much information coming at us. The information itself is overwhelming us. And there's a quote in my book from Yogi Bhajan, who's the person who brought Kundalini yoga to the West, from an interview he did, or a talk he did in 1995. You all, so this is like right when email, like AOL email dial-up was happening, and like there's no smartphones, whatever. And he basically says in this talk that the level of technology and information that's going to come at us, our nervous systems and our glandular systems will not be able to handle it. And we're going to try, and our minds are going to start to go crazy, hence the up levels of anxiety and depression and all these different things. And we're going to try to solve it with devices to manage the information. And what he says is that you don't need more information. What you actually need is more wisdom to make better choices, which I completely agree with, which is the same thing Gloria Steinem told me when I asked her, WTF, why are we here? Is like, we got liberated and great. And she's like, well, because you got to make choices and the systems didn't change and we just put more on. And so it's like, even though I know we're here on the Facebook right now and we're using technology, there are specific ways to do your life differently. It's not about doing more. It's not about 7 self-care tips. You already know what to do. It's how to do it differently. And so when I sat to write this book, I was like, I will not write another self-care book. I will not write another stress management book full of strategies. I need to write something that can actually give people a path to not say you're never going to have overwhelm. Of course you're going to have it, but you can have it for a moment and you can move through it versus a month or a year or the reality of your life. And really my intention is to help people find a more natural rhythm and a more sustainable success for themselves, which then becomes how we run our organizations, the financial systems, like the whole, it kind of rolls out from there. And so I talk about liberating your success, your definition of success, liberating your life force so that you actually, it's a resource that you're in control of it. Liberate your heart, liberate yourself from the deeper imprints that drive you to overgive and self-sacrifice. Liberate your time so that you're not working to timelines and deadlines that create toxic time pressure versus necessary pressure. And then the last one is liberate your power, which is not taking it all on, but instead staying focused on your part. And we can dive into any one of those. I'm a big about big perspective, but then let's make it practical.
Yeah, let's talk about the last one, because I think that that's just so key. And I love what you just said, which is, the key is to know your part, because I think that especially given what's happening in the world right now, part of the current overwhelm is that we just had like things stacked on top of things, and I mean, my inbox, and I know I let myself in for this, but my inbox is blowing up like every day with the different things I can do just in the political world right now. Right. And it's like, so, and I always have to, okay, what's mine to do? Like, what do I want to contribute to? What do I want to pay attention to? Because there's, 100 lifetimes I couldn't even get close. So tell us more about how we sort through that.
All right. So a picture says 1,000 words. So I'm going to kind of bring up another picture that's actually in the book. I use visual thinking a lot in my work because it helps us get past the mind kind of into a deeper level of like understanding. And so this one, I'm going to show you, whenever I show this to people, they get it right off the bat. All right. Can you see that? Oops, hold on. Oh, come back. Hold on. Come back. Okay. Can you see that, Maggie, where it says take it all on, focus on my part? Okay. So see the woman on the left, or the being, the person, she's a human. And we call her the 3-headed overwhelmed woman. We've all felt like her, right? So like, that's when you are stretched and feeling like I have to take it all on. And here's the thing we have to understand, and Maggie, I know you know this because you've been studying energy and life force for a zillion years, but a lot of people don't understand that we actually have what's called a magnetic field. And your magnetic field is like the earth has a magnetic field that is around it that protects it. You have that same magnetic field. You also have a psychic field. You have that taps into like all the different things that are going on. Yogis teach you have 10 bodies. That talk for today, but let's just say you have a magnetic field. And if you're not protecting it and you're not setting it and you're not connecting with yourself first every morning and every evening, I call it the bookend, you're letting all of the world stuff into your psychic, emotional, mental field, which then overwhelms you, because if you have any anxiety, it's going to make you feel anxious. If you have any overwhelm, it's going to make you feel overwhelmed. But what's happening, because we're going through such a global transformation at the same time as our own personal transformations, we already felt as people like, oh, our hearts would go out to all the different causes. But now it's like you just said, it blew up. And if you, and I am seeing, Maggie and everyone, I am seeing women, like I work with some pretty amazing women leaders in my circles and the councils that I run that are like high level intuitive beings, have been on a spiritual path for a long time. They are melting down because they don't have the physical practices, the nervous system practices, the glandular system practices. And some of what we're talking about here, they're tapping into the archetypal pain of racism. They're tapping into the archetypal pain of the feminine. They're typing into the political, that thing, and they don't even know that they're running what's called archetypal energy. It's an energy it's the systemic energy. And so then it triggers their own fear, and then they look like her. Everyone take a breath. You have no power here, by the way. The first time we drew it, she's actually leaking power. It's like leaking outside of her. There's 5 different ways we leak our power that don't actually allow us to be the agents of systemic change in the world, change in our own change that we wish to be. And we took the little leaky marks off because it made it look like she was peeing. So we had to take those off. But like, you're leaking power over here, let's just say, and you're overwhelmed. Now go over here to this one. And just take a breath. And I want you just to really look at this glyph, because these glyphs they're really powerful if you can just kind of take it in. And just notice how there's multiple beings here. And they each have something they're holding on their left hand and on their right hand. And they're holding on their left hand is what they're here to receive from this lifetime. Like, we're all here to have an experience, the things that we're here to receive. And then the right hand is the give, how we give our sacred work in the world, right? So like the worst teachers out there are the ones who aren't actually doing their own work, right? They're just telling everyone else what to do. Parents, the same thing. So like, we're all here to receive our own lessons. Why I love human design. Maggie did a session for me a couple months ago. And I'm like, I am so living my design because I know my lessons. I know my part. I know my soul design and what I need to learn. Or I get to learn. And so you're giving and receiving, it's balanced, right? And then notice how a person's across from the other person. So you like Maggie, I see Maggie over there, right? So Maggie, you like went deep in human design. I love human design. I think it's one of the best systems that are out there. I have a deal with the universe, gives me the best stuff versus all of it. I have no desire, nor do I want to have to go as deep as you've gone into the systems. Like, my job is to take esoteric stuff and create books that have these systems. You like go into these systems and you absorb them, and then you're able to really help people understand their soul signature because of that, right? So I can look over, across, this is like the game in grade school, the parachute game, it's like I look over at Maggie, hey, Maggie has human design over there, awesome. And then I sense people over to Maggie, like she has her part. Or a good friend of mine works in the financial world. And so she's like, it's on her thread to help elevate that financial system into one that's more based on wholeness. So when we can see everybody, and that it can be like, okay, like other people have it. And the question we want to be able to ask ourselves in our family system and in our community system and in the bigger world is, what is my part? And I watched you go through this with your parents, Maggie, even with your parents being up here in Seattle and you being down there. Like, I watched you actually do this really masterfully. I'm sure you had times of overwhelm, but I didn't see you go into self-sacrifice. I saw you getting really clear. It's like, what's the part I can do as their daughter, and what other support is needed, and how do we get that support in place? I've seen you do it with Sam. Like, I've seen you do it, and it's not that you haven't struggled, because you're doing it differently, but you've done that even masterfully, with Sam. And that's a huge distressing challenge, right? So it's like, it's important to know that we're doing this within our families, and we're also doing it in our communities, and we're also doing it in what's our part to play. But that means you have to know your part and be able to articulate it, and also value that part. And sometimes, many times, yesterday at the book release, I had Sharon Zeigen, who's that woman who does a lot of art for me. She's an artist, an amazing artist. Her mother-in-law was the governor of Texas. And she's surrounded by all these high-powered political women and doctors and CEOs. And when we first started working together, she didn't value her part as an artist. She thought that she wasn't doing enough. It was just art. And Maggie, I don't know if you've seen her art yet, but like her art is like the reflection of the sacred feminine. And the first time she gave me a piece of art, I was like, who are you? This is amazing, you know? And through our work together, she's really embraced that. And so I think it's a journey for all of us. I get like, I struggle with this. Sometimes I put my little blinders on and be like, just my part. What's my part? What's my part? What's my part? And then value it. And if you don't know your part, which a lot of people don't, that's just like, okay, great. That's something that's time for me to really be able to articulate, or what's my part now, which might be different. And that is sovereignty, right? That is knowing that you're here for a purpose. And it's not about self-sacrifice. Maggie and I talk a lot about this. Like, we're not sacrificing our health and our well-being for our missions anymore. And we both have.
I was going to say anymore.
Multiple times. I mean, you know, I got really sick, close to getting physically sick. And I was very clear, if I kept working the way I was working and running the models I was running, which a lot of our friends do, I call it the beast, I was going to get sick. And I didn't go over the line. And I redesigned my life and got really clear on what's just my part to do.
Yeah, no, me too. I mean, that's like, we had our parallel paths along that one. You know, you said something to me, I don't know, a couple months ago, maybe, that I really value, I want to share, and that helps me remember about my part and about each of us having our part in general, which is that you said, and you were talking about beauty, actually, and you might have been talking about that artist. I don't know, because her name didn't stick in my head and I don't have an image of her work. But you said, you were talking about the value of beauty and how, you know, we need beauty. I mean, beauty is part of, I mean, you look at nature and it's like so mind-boggling, heart-openingly beautiful and exquisite. I mean, it's really just sometimes wow. And yet we don't value beauty a lot, you know, and beauty itself gets devalued by the way that it's been commodified and, you know, all of that.
Distorted. What's distorted? Feminine.
It's very distorted. But you said, you were talking about beauty and you said it's really important for us to have other things to focus on than the disintegration, right? And it's not just denial, which is what a lot of times people would say, oh, well, you're just in denial. And it's like, no. And I thought about this because, you know, after the debates last week, people were all up in arms about, you know, whatever. And I commented on somebody's post, actually, because I said, you know what, I am not putting energy toward that conversation.
Good for you.
Because I want to put my energy somewhere else, because you know what, there is like a huge, like such an energy suck that is coming from that place that makes us want to not focus on anything else, even if we're getting pissed off while it's happening. And I'm like, we have to pull our energy out of that and be sovereign to be able to direct it where we will. And I say that to myself a lot. I'm like, what's my part? And I will pray to my solar angel too and say, okay, am I on task? Am I on my right track? Am I doing the right thing? Should I do something else? Because my mind and part of my heart is like, I want to participate, you know, and sometimes there is something, but a lot of times it's like, just stay focused. Stay focused. You have what you're doing. And it is important to, and this is part of why this piece about sovereignty, or this piece about, you know, developing this inner, you know, grounded and centeredness is so vital, because otherwise we can get pulled away and it's like even though we're fighting something, we're giving our life force to it.
We are, yes.
Right. Yes. And we're feeding it and it's draining us and it's killing us. So it's an interesting path to walk, to be aware, choosing what to be aware to, like you said, making choices and going, I'm not going to try to be aware about everything. and then doing that and honoring your part. And if your part is making beauty, it's giving us something uplifting to
Yes.
help us be able to keep doing our part.
Yes, 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 absolutely. I have one of the women in my feminine leadership councils. That's her job. Like literally, she helps people in both their house. She paints murals in their homes, and then
Oh,
she
it might
also
have been her that you were talking about.
could have been, and she just
Yeah.
started. She does, and she's doing like I'm going to have my colors done by her, and she helped me with some of my clothing for my fashion shoot, and she helps people bring beauty into their home and onto their body. And she was having this like, and she's like, you know, she's very like us. She's concerned about everything in the world, and she was short circuiting and judging herself for like, you know, this seems so frivolous. And I'm like, you stop right now. I'm like, beauty will save the world. Art will save the world. People need something else to actually look at. I did a series on my podcast, Feminine Power Time, called Sacred Transformation a couple months ago. And it was about this, about what's happening right now is we are it's kind of like being on one of those boards, you know, like you had the balance boards. We're healing the past collectively and for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to create the future and the new.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to stay stable and balanced materially, emotionally at the same time. This is not easy, right? And so one of the things that I just wanted to read this quote from the book, because it's what Sharon talked about yesterday in the book Unveiling, and what Ann Richards, she wasn't the first governor of Texas who was a woman, but she was kind of the first governor, because the other one, I don't know how, it was like a weird way she became governor. But anyway, she was the governor in the early 90s. So you can imagine Texas, big old boys, you know, all of that. And when Ann and Sharon would ask Ann, you know, how do you do it? And she would say, she said to her two things. One, she said, and this is in the book, it literally says, here's the wisdom bite, I'll read it to you all. I'm not going to waste my chi on that. This is what Ann would say. I'm not going to waste my chi, my life force, my energy, my juice. And she would, like, you know, stand there and let whoever rant, rage, you know, whatever. And she would just, this is the thing. This is how we stay in our circle of power. You know, and you're observing it happen. It could be your partner, it could be your kid, it could be your family member, it could be what's happening on the Facebook, where we're, you know, it's you have to be really aware of there's this energy of fire and air that's going on right now elementally that creates overwhelm. And it's like it wants to pull, you know, if we go Darth Vader, Star Wars, just play with me here for a second, okay? So let's just say there is the Force and there is the Vaders and there are the, you know, the Jedis. You think that the Darth Vaders want the Jedis to be like focused and laser focused and like connected and like on purpose? Of course not, because when that happens, you know, you saw the movies, like, you know, the light prevails, and that we need every single one of us to stay focused. And it's about staying focused. And I always say, I have one wise woman eye open over there. So there are certain things that will get me triggered, for sure. I won't name them here. You all don't need to know, but you all have your own, right? That can send me into that spinny, fiery place. And then what I'm doing is I'm just yelling into the void. I'm just adding to the air and the spin, versus what's actually needed is grounding, earth and water, calm. Because if you don't have a way to ground the uprising, it spins out of control, which is what we saw in the riots when they got really, really bad, right? It's like there's no grounding, there's no water. And so I think it's really important. If you're a sovereign being, you have a responsibility for understanding your impact in the space. This is part of power. This is part of self-empowerment. And asking yourself, am I adding to the frenzy, to the overwhelm, to the fragmentation, to the separation? And or am I offering, or am I offering something that grounds it, or something that calms it? So like an example with Sharon, she used to go on to Facebook and just rail against anything that was, you know, all the things that we would rail against. And I said, you know, you would do a lot more. A, you're wasting your chi. B, you do a lot more good for the world if you just posted your picture up, put a poem up, and then got off. And that's what she does now. And she has so much more energy to create her art, which is, it turns out, only she can actually create. Now, last thing I'll say that Anne said, and Sharon just told the story last night, which is why it's so fresh, kind of as she was dying, she died of esophagus cancer. She said the other thing that she wanted Sharon to know was, she said to her, don't let them steal your chi. Don't let them steal your chi. And I think we have to be really aware of that. And one of the things what I wrote here is
tell us a little bit more about that, because you have another chapter on life force, right? So
yeah. So here's my wisdom book. The book has these wisdom bites in it, and it basically says this: don't waste your life force and voice fighting, ranting, and raging. Focus on what you can influence and go where the flow guides you. And yeah, the second section is on life force, because most of us don't have a daily relationship with our life force. And life force is like money, it's your resource. But the thing about money is you can live without a lot of it. You can't live without life force. You can't do anything. So a lot of the practices I teach are about getting people into connection with their life force. And then, Maggie, you know this because you're big on retaining and cultivating, retaining our life force and draining it. It's part of how you live. It's part of how I live. And just for everyone to know, it's like it wasn't like we were taught this. This isn't just about going to yoga class and doing bendy yoga and you can do a handstand. It's not just about drinking green drink like you all. That's just base level. What is needed right now is strengthening our nervous systems and keeping our magnetic field strong. And this is like not more to do. It's actually like doing it differently. And if you do these things differently and you learn these things, like I have a magnetic field, I have life force, like what are they talking about? And exploring it. And my daily morning practice, and basically my I don't have a lot of black and whites, but one black and white is if you do not have a consistent morning daily practice in which you are setting your field, connecting to 4 different yourself, to the universe, to the ground, to like other humans that it feels loving, and you're not protecting your energy fields, you're screwed. You're you're either gonna crash that day, you're gonna get swirled up like a windsock with no pole. It's just too intense. And so it's not to share that like, oh great, now I have to go do 7,000 things. This can take, it's just doing the first hour of your day different. You do the last hour. If all you all do when you leave today is install a bookend practice, get aware of what are you doing and interacting with the first hour of your day, and what are you ingesting and interacting with the last hour of the day. Because what you allow in the first hour sets the field for the whole day. What you put in the last hour goes to bed with you. So if you're watching a scary movie, if you're watching an emotionally draining movie, if you're on the Facebook, all those people, they're in bed with you in your subconscious.
Ew.
Right? And if you're like, you get up in the morning and you're like, I'm gonna go see what's going on, and you've not even peed or brushed your teeth. Who's done that? I know we've all done it. Don't do it. And notice the difference between what's draining you and diffracting you and what's actually sustaining you. That's like a very simple practice that can have significant impact.
And so do you have, you probably have suggestions in your book about what you would do during those bookend times. Can you give us just a taste of, if somebody's like, well, I always heard that was a good idea, but I don't really know what to do. Or I don't really like to sit and meditate. I go back to sleep. Or so.
Yeah, when I first started meditating, yeah, I used to drool on myself. I'd be like, oh. There are, so interesting because people are walking around right now saying, stay healthy, stay healthy, stay healthy. And that's important. I'm saying, stay harmonized, stay harmonized, stay harmonized, and you will stay healthy. It's like, and so there's so much I could say about that. Excuse me, I do have a daily flow morning practice kit that I actually created that has a video on it and has a little booklet that kind of goes into the first morning. But what I would say is,
and is that something they get through your book, or can they
you can go onto my website. You can go to christinearylo.com, and it's actually at the bottom of the page where you can go to dailyflowpractice.com. And you can get it there. It's also these pieces of this are in the book as well. But I think if I was just to get to I can either teach you the recipe or I can give 2 inquiries because I know we're coming up to time. So which one, Maggie, do you prefer?
2 inquiries, you mean what you might be
What you can think
reflecting on
about.
when
Yeah,
you-
I can show you one more glyph that kind of gives you the idea of what one way to kind of get started, or I can give you 2 inquiries, or I can give you a practice. I can any 3. You pick one. It's like, let's make a deal, but it's like, let's not be overwhelmed. You pick which one. Pick which one you want, and I can do.
why don't you give us a practice?
Okay, perfect. Since we're talking about life force, I'm going to teach you the
Yeah.
practice in less than 3 minutes here. That if you were to say, Christine, what are 3 of the things that have kept you out of burnout and overwhelm? I would say this would be one of my top 3. And I've been doing it since 2012 every day. I created it because I was about to go on a book tour for my second book, and I had 24 events in 3 months. And I was a nomad. And I knew if I didn't do something differently, I was going to keep draining myself till I got sick and burned out. So this is built on the premise that you want to retain your life force, not drain your life force. So I want everyone to close your eyes and just take a deep breath and just center in with yourself. Just pull all of your attention into your own being. And it's almost like you can feel if you had like a tree or a beautiful like crystalline pole just running from the top of your head down through your whole body, down to the ground. Just take an exhale so you can just slow down and let all the particles we've been talking about a lot, and just need to, wisdom doesn't operate quick. It's a slow thing. Then we have to take one hand, put one hand on your belly and one hand on your heart. And just imagine that your body is like a chalice. And this chalice holds your life force. And when it's full, you are vital and you have all the energy you need. And when it's low, you're crabby, you're foggy, you're overwhelmed, and eventually you have physical disease. So we want to be in relationship to this life force. So we're just going to take a life force reading, like you're dipping a dipstick into the chalice. So on a scale of 0 to 100, what is your life force level right now? 0 to 100. 100 is full, 0 empty, and 50 is half. And whatever number kind of first settles in, say that number. Maggie, what's yours?
86.
74. Okay, I'll tell you the scale in a moment, but I want you to ask the next question. So the next question, so we make sure that is what do I need to receive today? What do I need to receive today so that you retain your energy and you don't drain even more? What do you need to receive today? And just let your intuition drop something in, or you might feel something or just know something. Just depends on how your inner wisdom works. And if you haven't been connecting with your inner wisdom, it might not say anything. So just say, what would I love to receive? And just kind of answer from your mind. Maggie, what comes up for you?
Sunshine.
And I got permission to slow down. Okay, so open your eyes. So notice that didn't say 7 days in Tahiti, didn't cost money, right? I got permission to slow down because I just unveiled my book yesterday, and it's been, pretty intense. And I could feel myself wanting to just get started to get the next, and you got sunshine. And so here's the thing. If you are below a 50, you're serving from your reserves. And if you're serving from your reserves, you're already going down into the place where emotional, mental, and eventually physical sickness, physical disease is the last place it shows up in your body. So you don't want to serve from your reserve. It's one of our self-sustainability stands is I never serve from my reserves. If you're 75 and above and you give, but you don't receive, you're not going to drain yourself to the place where you're going to get imbalanced, but you want to keep, why not stay high between 50 and 75. You still need to receive so you don't dip back. This is all about keeping your giving and receiving in harmony versus waiting until you bankrupt yourself. And then you ask, like, what do I need to receive today? And then you design your day that way, right? So Maggie, you design the rest of your day to get the sunshine. I'm going to design my day like, there are many things I could do. I got things that are needing to be done. but I need to slow down. And tomorrow's my anniversary with Noah. And, book releases, book unveiling is a lot of work. But that old part of me will be like, okay, we need to do the next versus allowing myself to savor what's just happened. So this practice is super simple. Don't discount what I'm sharing with you is not significant. It's the simple things we do every day that make a significant impact. So we don't have to wait to the disaster, the disease, the divorce, the drama, the whatever it might be that blows us up to happen. And I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that anyone's done anything wrong if those things have happened to us. I'm just saying, don't discount the simple for not significant. And like I said, with human design, this is my deal with the universe. Give me the stuff, the practices that really work, so I don't have to have a million. And that's like with the systems, give me the systems that really help me understand how I work, so I don't need to have a million of them. And that's what my hope is, that these practices that call them stay harmonized practices can really support people. And just do that every morning. Noah and I do it together. And it's one of the things we do. We check in and we make sure we ask each other. And I have in the book, there's a woman, Rebecca, who's a single mom of a 4-year-old boy, Joaquin. They do this every day, but she asks, instead of what do you need to receive, something like, what is your heart need today? And so they each share that every morning. And she says now, so he's 4. And now if she forgets, he reminds her, mommy, like, we haven't done our practice. Can you imagine that? Like a little boy who's 4 is growing up connected to what his heart needs.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, just as a closing here, so we're going to wrap up, but if you can just give us, I would love to hear your take on how you feel human design has supported you in terms of your sovereignty, in terms of understanding this piece about how we get so overwhelmed without realizing it. And how is human design, because I know you've like you said, I've done a reading for you, I've worked with some of your people, we've talked before about whether or not people would be a fit for you on your team based on looking at the designs. I mean, there's a lot of great ways that you can use design. So if you can just give us a little window, like you said, you're not a specialist, you're not interested in becoming a specialist, and yet this has been a great tool for you. If you can just give us a little window into that, that'd be great.
Yeah. When I teach feminine leadership, one of the cornerstones is self-sustainability, personal sustainability. I don't believe you can have success without personal sustainability. And everyone's designed differently, like that, we know, right? And so I'm just thinking about my one of my current groups, my leadership groups. When you came to, so I had Maggie come and we did a human design session, and we had all designs. We had all 5 designs in this group. And it was so freeing and liberating for them, the people who were projectors, to be able to say, like, actually, I really do need to rest. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking of my good friend Shasta Nelson, who you also know because she's been in a Queen Circle with us before. She and I, our books came out a couple months from each other. We've been writing together. Shasta's a projector. I'm a manifesting generator. And I have that 3420 line, which is like, even in my Vedic astrology chart, it says it's called the infatigable one. And Shasta is a projector, and she just like, and she's also into human design. And she just looks at me and she's just like, if I tell someone what I would do in a day, most people would just be like, but for me, it's not that way, as long as it's in my joy. And so the things that aren't in my joy, like honestly, going onto the Facebook and doing posting and all of that, like it just sucks my energy. Going on to email sucks my energy out. And I've watched that, having been in the online world for 10, 15 years, which is why I chose not to create a business model that was, based on that, to find a different way. So I think it gives us permission to be who we are. I think with Shasta and I, we have a monthly Femimind that we just meet once a week or once a month, and we talk on the phone. We've been doing it for 5 years. We don't compare ourselves to each other in that way. It allows us to support each other. I mean, sometimes I get jealous, because not jealous, but envious. I'm like, oh, I like to just take all that rest. But I'm like, oh, that's a sign, Christine. Maybe the manifesting generator needs some rest. And so do I have a weekly Sabbath practice I do every Saturday. No thinking, no creating for productivity. And that's my lifesaver. And if I don't put that weekly reset in, bad news bears. So I think those are some of the things, Maggie, and I'm so happy that you decided to become, deep dive into it. I know enough to know that it's one of the best systems, I think, out there, to understand how you're designed, and then apply that to how we work.
I'm just pulling up your body graph real quick, because the thing I do remember about you as I write, yeah, you see, the thing is even though you're a manifesting generator, you only have one motor. So you do have the sacral going directly to the throat, which is the channel of charisma. Not surprising, but you only have one motor. So you don't have as much power as somebody who has more motors would have. So yeah, so you do need more rest than a lot of other manifesting generators, actually. So give yourself permission.
I do. Well, you told me I'm like,
a lot done.
Projector light, because I only have a couple defined centers, but it is, yeah, and giving myself that permission. And I think that's the thing that's also core to this work around overwhelm. You don't need to. I mean, yes, there is wisdom and knowledge. I mean, Maggie's taking a yoga teacher training right now. Like there is, I've done advanced teacher trainings. Like you don't ever stop. But it's about giving yourself permission, even in times of intensity. And I will be honest, a couple of weeks ago, I sold myself out of my Sabbath. And not just I paid the price, but Noah says he paid the price, because I got a scorpion tail and it comes out a lot more, and I stepped on the line of overwhelm because I didn't receive what I need. And that's a big piece of what we're doing, is we're breaking these imprints of that it's weak to need something and there's no time for it, to actually trust that if I take the space I need, and that I also just desire, like me tomorrow, 2 days after my book unveils, Noah and I are going to go have an adventure on Vashon Island for our anniversary. And I'm, just like giving myself that space, and it will challenge your sense of security and safety and all of those things. But that's the work we're all doing right now, so that we can release this primal fear and get really centered that we are sustained, we are supported, if we work in harmony with how the natural rhythms actually work on this planet.
Right. Yeah. And I'll just make this closing comment and then ask you if you have one, which is that we have to create this new world that we are desiring with a different energy.
Yes.
Like we can't think, oh, well, I'll overdo it now and then later on it'll be different, because that's not how it works. We actually have to do it different now in order to bring that into being, because it's not actually so far away from where we are. It's, if you think of it energetically and interdimensionally rather than through a scientific, logical cause and effect lens, it's not that far. And the path isn't through pushing our way there. It's through the difference in the way that we be now, and the difference in the way that we create from a different way that we be now. Yeah.
That's exactly true. And that's my hope with this book. I mean, I think I was writing for the future. This isn't the first book. I'm writing 3 books, right? Kind of, I know I'm at the same time. I was going to write another book first, but the universe was really clear. This one first.
Well, thank goodness, because we really need it right now, Christine.
Yeah, we do, right? So it is. You got to. It's not about doing more with less or doing the same. It's about doing it differently. And there are ways and there are paths. And now, I guess the last thing I would leave you with is expect that it's going to challenge you. Expect that it's going to press your status quo, your comfort zone. Expect that you're going to look around and other people are, I've been watching my friends for the last 2 years build their businesses and expand staffing, top line. And I'm like, pare down, get to the core. And then I had inner mean girls about that, but I trusted my own inner knowing. And thank God, because when the pandemic hit, my business I leaned it down so much to have the space to write this book, because I was unwilling to sacrifice myself for my mission and my writing, as I had done my previous 3 books. That I was able to make it through and sustained. I was able to make it through in a way that other people who had a lot more they had built up, was a lot more challenging.
Yeah.
And that's where we're all going, right? Is like to get down, to pare down to that simplicity. So I think, and just everyone take an exhale. This is not a sprint. You haven't done anything wrong. You're in the right place. And we take one step at a time, and just to embrace it's time to do it differently. And that's not about doing it more, or it's just like, we're in this together. So I'm so grateful, Maggie, for your friendship. And I'm so grateful for all of you for being here. And I look forward to seeing what we all co-create.
Yeah, thank you, Christine. I've really appreciated our friendship and the things that I've learned from you over time, and the way we've been able to kind of model and inspire each other when we've wavered a bit, and also the synergy of the expansion of our awareness and consciousness has been really, really powerful for me. So go get Christine's book, Overwhelmed and Over It. I presume it's available on Amazon. Can they get it through? Do you have
it's available on many channels, which is so exciting.
Barnes and Noble, probably
everywhere. Indie Books, Bound, whatever floats your boat. It's one of the things I'm very excited. It used to be the day everything had to be on Amazon, which is great. Good. But I'm like, let's support many different retailers so that we don't have oligopolies anymore. How about that? We could do that. That's an act of harmonic defiance. So,
I love that. And then you could probably go and order it from your local bookstore too.
Yeah. This is about our choices. Our choices to do things differently, to create a world based in harmony, are significant. Even as simple as I'm buying a book. And then for me, I'm like, I don't really care if I'm an Amazon bestseller. Yeah, I've done that 3 times. I know how to do it. I know the buttons to press. I don't care. If it happens, it's nice. I care that this book gets into the hands of many, 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 many people, however that's supposed to happen. So that to me is those are those small, simple, significant acts. We do them all the time in our lives. I've seen you do it with your daughter and your daughter's health. This is that is how we create a different system. Harmonic defiance.
I love that. I love that. Oh, I'm going to steal that one. All right, Christine. Well, thank you so much. Good luck with all of your, with your book launch, and have fun with Noah tomorrow. That'll be great. I love Vashon Island, so I'm going to have fun thinking of you over on Vashon exploring. And I hope to see you again before too long, maybe in December.
Sounds good.
All right, dear. Many blessings.
Much love, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Bye.